Well, hi, Week in the Tacklers. It's the Week in the Tackle podcast, the podcast where we try and get together and tackle things in the world of football we thought were interesting. I'm Tom Rennie. Brian Dundas, he's still on holiday, so he's not back until tomorrow. But we did think with the big breaking news we would do what we did say we were going to do at the start of the year, some quick reaction podcast about things that are happening, and then we realised we're really busy and couldn't do it. But we can today, because I'm not as busy today, and this is monumental breaking news. And the news this morning as we came into the studio on Monday morning is that Ruben Amorim has been sacked as the manager of Manchester United after a dismal and disappointing 14 months in charge. His press conference after the Leeds game on Sunday, we were watching it in the TalkSport studios where I was working on the day, and everyone was a bit like, what? What is he saying? Like, I'm not Tuchel, I'm not Mourinho, I'm the manager, I don't want to be the head coach. And I feel like we've been speaking about Amorim leaving for a long time. There's reports that he was trying to resign or something like that, only like 3 months into his time in charge. So we sort of thought like, yeah, okay, fair enough. We've done this 5 times already. He'll see out his contract. He'll see out the season. And they're like 6th in the table. They're on a decent enough run, not losing too many games, not winning too many games, but players are away. Maybe he's just frustrated. And he's kind of become this comic character in a way, Amorim, because he's so, people say honest. I don't know if honest is the right word. Sort of blunt, maybe, might be the more appropriate word. So we didn't think much of it. But it does seem this row he's had with Jason Wilcox, director of football, on Friday has led to a decision that he was getting sacked before the Leeds game. There'd been some sort of conversation before that. An early Monday morning, he's been sacked. Now, a few things on this from me, and we'll get Danny to give us a nice long monologue on tomorrow's programme. But I'm just looking on social media now at the reactions to it. And there's a picture doing the rounds, which is really getting on my nerves. And it's Ruben Amorim out for a walk with his wife Maria leaving their Cheshire home. And this is why you should never, ever feel bad about criticising or going a little bit over the top, being a bit dramatic when you're criticising football people. Because this is a man who just made millions of pounds from being sacked from a job he hated. He is the luckiest man in the world. Imagine your job, right? Now, I like my job, so I don't know if it's a fair comparison. But I do imagine if I got sacked from my job and they also gave me like 5 to 10 million pounds. Can you imagine how good that brunch is today between Ruben and Maria somewhere in Cheshire with all the Real Housewives? It's going to be fantastic. So don't feel sorry for him. Let's judge this record. I had a really interesting chat today with Danny Higginbottom, who has been the chief correspondent for me of Amorim fandom. And he has continued to stay on the fence because he wanted to judge Amorim on a full season as a United manager, which he is not going to get. But he said to me, which triggered me, it did trigger me. He said to me that he feels like there'd been clear improvement at Manchester United under Ruben Amorim, and his justification was they're now currently sitting in 6th in the table. They've closed the gap on Chelsea, closed the gap on Liverpool, etc., etc., etc. My response to that would obviously be that, well, Liverpool have got significantly worse and have lost 6 games this season, as opposed to they may well have been unbeaten at this stage last season and clearly at the top. So look, okay, you could argue this season United are not on course for their worst ever campaign. The last campaign they had, they finished 15th. It was their lowest top flight finish since relegation in 1974. It was their lowest ever Premier League finish, and it was a dreadful campaign. But look, he came in after, 6-7 weeks or so, so maybe there's some mitigation there. I don't think there is, but I can see from the desperate, dismal 9 months he had in charge last time to this time, have things improved a bit? Yeah, okay, fair enough. He did get to spend £300 million on players this summer, so I'd fucking hope there was some improvement. Sorry, Tim, that's the only one, but that was a fun one for me. So deeply, I don't buy that. And also, let's look at the eyeball test. This man has driven me mad in the last few months, if not the whole time he's been there. Because he's playing this formation, right? The formation 3-4-3, which we've all sort of come to know and despise. And he said a few weeks ago, the Pope wouldn't be able to make him change this formation. Well, maybe he had a come to Jesus moment. Maybe the Pope actually got on the phone. He's a sports fan these days. The Chicago Pope, the woke Pope, I don't know, right? But he did change the formation in the game against Newcastle, where with a few players out injured and players away at AFCON, all that sort of stuff, It was a really, really good 1-0 victory. A stodgy mid-table 1-0 victory. The kind of win that I always think is quite impressive. It's not particularly watchable, but it's quite impressive. And so they got the victory there. They go back into the next game, and he goes back to this 3-4-3. Now, I did a game, Man U Bournemouth, in the opening months of Amorim. So look when that was, last season at Old Trafford. And Bruno Fernandes kept dropping into this space in between the third centre-half on the right and the wing-back. And he drops into this space, and he has to, on the half-turn, try and find a pass out wide. Bournemouth sussed that out in about 10 minutes. So the third time he did it, they got caught, and they got caught, and they got caught again. So Bournemouth sussed it out in a few minutes. He continued to make Bruno Fernandes do that for the next several months. Totally, ridiculously, tactically inflexible. And when he finally, after all this time, and I'm not saying journalists are right and fans are right, like he is obviously someone who's studied coaching and has been successful at Sporting Club de Portugal, Lisbon, to the rest of us, the unpretentious people. So he's obviously been successful, but it's fascinating to me. It's bizarre to me that he would have stuck with it all this time, stuck to those principles, changed them after a year of people begging him to do it, then going straight back to what had failed previously. And I think that's his downfall in the end. He is obviously, evidently, a very arrogant man. And arrogance can have positives because it can make you believe in yourself and it can make you believe in your ideas. But when it hasn't worked, and I would love to hear more from people telling me it has worked and justifying some of it. But when it hasn't worked to this degree, I don't know, maybe this is the moment where you're a bit like, you know what? I was wrong there, some humility. But when you've gone so far into the trenches, you couldn't. So it was incredibly arrogant. The honesty, I think, was a problem because there was that line, wasn't there, where he said, this is the worst Manchester United in 147 years. That was back in January last year. Like, how was that acceptable to a club with their budget? Forget the history. The history is neither here nor there, I think. It's the budget. Like, if there are clubs with great history that don't have the budget. Everton have an incredible history. They ain't got the budget. Leeds have got a great history. They ain't got the budget, right? You get my point here. But Man United have got the budget because this incredible, great commercial expansion into the 1990s and early noughties. And so for their budget, you just can't be saying that. For their budget, you can't lose this many games. And then again, they spend huge money in the summer. And yeah, there's been some improvement for the money they spend and the wages. Are they anywhere near Arsenal or Man City or Villa? No, people are like, oh, no, they shouldn't be. Yeah, on wage bill, they should actually. And wasn't that the goal? That was the goal, wasn't it? To challenge for the Premier League title. And now we're accepting a battle with Brentford for 6th. Great for Brentford. And well done to Keith Andrews and all of that. But it just didn't take him anywhere. And like on top of that too, I'm thinking about players that have improved under Amorim, and I'm struggling. Like, I don't think any of the strikers have improved. He bombed out Rasmus Højlund, and look, he was a Ten Hag signing, but gone to Napoli and proved that he's got ability. He bombed out Harry Maguire, then brought him back in, had to come crawling back to Harry Maguire. Benjamin Šeško has been brought in, and I would hope that Amorim was involved in some way in that purchase, but there's been no improvement there. Matheus Cunha wants to play in a certain position, but he's asking him to play sort of inverted winger, and he wants to play in a different position. That's not really worked for him, almost number 10. That's not what Matheus Cunha has done successfully during his time in the Premier League. And Bruno Fernandes, right? I have this theory that I've said to you guys before, that a world-class player is the player that I would pick if the movie Space Jam happened again, but this time the Monstars wanted to play football. And maybe this time humanity didn't pick like Bugs Bunny, because that would be a mistake. And they picked footballers. If we had to pick a team to save humanity, there are points in the time that Fernandes has been at Man United that I'd put him in my team. A sensational player. A bit of a git, sure, but a sensational player who can do everything all over the field. And Amorim has wasted the golden years of Bruno Fernandes. And maybe it's because the club have wanted to sell him to Saudi for as much money as possible before he gets too old. Who knows what the truth of that is? We'll find out in the future. But this brilliant, ingenious attacking midfielder has been stuck in a sort of double pivot midfield with a running in treacle too old, too slow Casemiro. What would he have done at Man City in that time? What could he be doing in the Martin Odegaard role at Arsenal? What could he be doing at Real Madrid and Barcelona? What could he be doing at Bayern Munich? This is a top-level player. And now the next manager comes in, Darren Fletcher, and then after that, who knows, Michael Carrick or what have you. They're not going to play him in that position. They're going to put him further up the field. They're going to make him a number 8. They're going to give him 2 defensive midfielders to protect him. They're going to go 4 at the back. They're going to have 1 or 2 strikers. They might do 4-3-3. Like, there was so much that could have been done with the resources that were there, and he basically did nothing with them. And they've won 8 of their 20. And they've got a +4 goal difference this season, and people tell me that's improvement. And yeah, maybe it is, but they're improving on what Amorim had previously delivered. Compared to previous Manchester Uniteds, this is not particularly good. Compared to the wage bill, it's not particularly good. And even like his big moment was the Europa League final. Did anyone who wasn't a Man United or Tottenham fan get through that entire game? Why did you do that? It was appalling. He was an appalling setup, an appalling performance. Again, going to his bloody formation, which did not work. And then when they go a goal behind, there's a great clearance off the line from Van der Ven in the final, sure. But beyond that, were they knocking on the door, bashing on the door? Were they Man United in a cup final against Spurs? No. The moment that goal goes in from Brennan Johnson, it sort of fell over. So failed in the Europa League final when they had the biggest budget in that competition for years. Ended 15th in the Premier League table in a season where he was in charge for nearly 85% of it. Worst win ratio of any Manchester United manager. Worst goals conceded per game ratio. Lowest clean sheet ratio. Bad on the eyeball test. Beaten by Grimsby in the Carabao Cup somewhat embarrassingly. Never in any sort of title race. Never really convincing. Couldn't go on a run of wins just to let some poor boy cut his hair. Does that continue now, or does he get to cut his hair now? Now Amorim's gone, he can reset. Maybe he can have a little back door, because that hair's getting ridiculous. I bet he can't even get in his back door, how big his hair has got. So, came incredibly arrogant, incredibly cocky. From the moment he signed the contract, he seemingly wanted to leave. And I take the point entirely that a director of football has had too much power over the players and over the team selection and all that sort of stuff. Fine, I think that's a fair point that people are making today. And there's a conversation about Jason Wilcox and the other fellow, Omar Barada, I think it is, who are making these decisions. And they need to be held to account for what they have done, the players they've brought in, and the poor quality of elements of this squad to play the system that Amorim wanted. But also, they knew they had a dud. And that's why they weren't buying players specifically for his system. There was some report about Antoine Semenyo going to Man United, or at least they were talking about trying to bring in Antoine Semenyo, and they told him he was going to play left wing. There was talk that Amorim was going to play him left wing back. What are you talking about? Like, oh, you can come, but you can play in my system. What? Like, obviously they weren't going to do that. So, no surprise that I think he's gone. The only surprise is that I think A, he lasted this long, B, they let him get through the summer, C, they spent all that money in the summer on players that maybe he didn't want. And if they did want him, they haven't given him enough time to work with them. But again, to my original point, and we'll do some more on this with Danny on the next podcast when he's back off his latest holiday. Don't feel sorry for Ruben Amorim. This is the luckiest person in the world. The luckiest person in all sport. He came into Manchester United, achieved precisely nothing. Will probably get a good job after this if he wants one. Got paid millions and millions of £1,000,000 to fail repeatedly. Got sacked with 18 months on his contract, so he'll have millions in the skyrocket as he takes his wife out for a nice lunch in Cheshire on Monday morning. And has he taken much reputational damage? No, because it'll go to Ratcliffe, Wrightley and Wilcox and Barada and all these guys. And he'll get another job if he wants one. He'll go back to Sporting when that comes up, as it invariably will. He'd get another Premier League job. When Emery leaves Aston Villa, he'd probably be in the running for that. So, don't feel bad for him. But just remember, Ruben Amorim failed miserably. The data doesn't support him. Anyone who watched his team doesn't support him. And penny for the thoughts of Marcus Rashford, Kobbie Mainoo, Scott McTominay, all the guys that he bombed out as not good enough and delivered precisely squat since letting them go. Right, that's my little rant on Ruben Amorim. That's the big story of the day. We'll get more from Danny in the next week in the Tackle podcast. And we'll also ask him too about Wilfried Nancy sacked at Celtic after 33 days, which happened just as we started recording this show. And we might do a little bit of West Ham getting beaten by Wolves as well, only because it's very funny. Week in the Tackle. We're back later this week with Danny when he's back off his holiday. We'll see you then. Subscribe on YouTube if you want to watch me do this rant in my home studio. And if you're subscribed on Spotify, get over to Apple and subscribe there, or vice versa. Tim Horsey produced the programme, which basically means beeped out the one swear word that I did. We'll see you next time on Week in the Tackle.